Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
Chapter 4, I have us having read verse 15, on which there's no Rashi, which I want to read verse 15 again to see if there are any lingering questions on it. And if not, we'll jump right into verse 16. So, verse 15, which in our pagination in the Torah Chaim is page Mem Zayin. V'dibarta elav, you, Moses, will speak to him. V'samta et hadvarim b'fiv. This is God speaking to Moshe about Aaron, who in the previous verse we're being told is maybe even already coming to meet you, Moshe. You will place the words in his mouth. Vanochi, and I, God. We talked about the significance of the Anochi here, the Anochi of Anochi Adonai Elohecha of the Ten Commandments. Eheyeh, we talked about that as just a verb form meaning I will be, but it's also the name by which God said God should be known to the Israelites. Eheyeh, Asher Eheyeh, reduced to Eheyeh, I will be. So it could either just mean I will be, or it's a hint at God's name itself. Im picha, strange language we talked about. I will be with your mouth. We wouldn't say that in the English vernacular. It might just mean that's maybe how it was said in ancient Hebrew, or there's something deeper there. Ve'im pihu, I will be with his mouth as well. V'horei tietchem, I will instruct you. I will teach you. If you want to play with it, I will Torah you. Same root as Torah. Et asher ta'asun, that which you should do. And we spoke about how the word ta'asun there is an odd verb because everything up until now seems to be about speech, but ta'asun seems to be about action. It doesn't say, I will teach you everything you need to say, asher tidabrun, but rather, v'horei tietchem, I will instruct you everything you need to do, suggesting there's going to be something happening in Pharaoh's presence and the Israelites' presence that's not just words, but also some kind of an actions. Maybe that's hinting at the signs and wonders that are going to be displayed. Okay, that's where we are. Rashi was quiet on the verse, has more to say on the next verse. Let me pause to see if there are any comments or questions on this. Barry?
Well, just taking literally one by one here, it's very interesting, the sequence. Speak is sound to the ear, and put words. How to put words. He's already speaking, and now, in addition to speaking, he's going to put words in his mouth, and then the difficulty is God says, I will be with your mouth and with his mouth. So there's speaking and hearing, and then there's putting in the mouth, and then being with the mouth. And then the last is teaching for action, but it's an odd sequence. Do we ever see this repeated? Is this ever repeated elsewhere?
It's sort of interesting that Rashi and others, mostly Rashi, are not picking up on that potential redundancy. Right? Once God says that you will speak to him, what else is being conveyed by, and you will put words in his mouth? Right? Isn't that what speaking to him is, or are we supposed to understand that? Everyone get the same warning? Let's take a look at it, see if there's anything that triggers for us. Not near us. Okay. Or is the dibarta elav what you're saying to him, and samta et dvarim b'fiv what you are telling him to be saying to them, right? But it certainly is a Zeomer Darsheni place, right? A place about which you would say that this is inviting a drash, and Rashi's quiet on it. So it's a good pickup, Barry, that it's not the only way that could have been expressed. Okay, anything else in that verse? Okay, let's go to verse 16 and see how far we get. Renee, you want to read verse 16?
ודיבר הוא לך אל העם, והיה הוא יהיה לך לפה, ואתה תהיה לו לאלוהים. and he will speak for you to the people, and it'll be his mouth that for you, and you will be to him like a god, like a master.
Yeah, I mean, your pause in translating that is one of the very interesting things about the verse, right? There are several interesting things about the verse, even though the vocabulary, it's another one of these verses where their vocabulary is easy, right? If you know rudimentary Hebrew, you know what daber means, you know what hu means, you know what lacha means, you know what am means, you know what peh means, you know what atah means, you know Elohim means, but still, how to put it all together is interesting. First of all, look at the two lachas and ask yourself, I'm kind of leading the witness a little bit as we prepare for Rashi. Ask yourself if the lacha in the first phrase and the lacha in the second phrase means the same thing. Remember that prepositions in biblical Hebrew are pluripotent. A lamed and a bet and even a mem preposition means many more things than we normally translate them into. Okay.
The second one has a dagesh inside.
Yeah, that's also interesting. You know that I love the details of diacritical marks, and I have no idea why there's a dagesh in that lamed. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's no grammar that I know that suggests why that letter should have a dagesh in it. But that's besides the point. If someone has a thought, please share it. V'diberu lacha. This is now still God speaking to Moshe about Aaron. He, meaning Aaron, will speak lacha. How do we translate that? He will speak to you. He will speak to you. But then you have another two. El ha'am. He will speak to you to the people. Just we hold that. V'hayahu yelacha lepeh, and he will be for you to a mouth, as a mouth, for a mouth. Again, the lacha, it's hard to know how to handle the lacha. V'atah tielo, and you will be to him, for him, as him, lelohim. And again, lamed as an as a two, and the question of what does it mean to say for God, for Elohim, to say to Moshe that you, Moshe, are going to be to Aaron and Elohim. Right? So lots of places where we could throw some questions at this verse. Let me pause and see if other people have thoughts or comments on the verse where we look at the Rashi. And yes, hi, Joni. Welcome to sunny California. Okay. I didn't see the hands. Rick.
Hi. The dot and the dagesh, that it sometimes shows the doubling of the letter. So if there's two lameds there, maybe there's one for Aaron and one for Moses. There's the two people standing there. That's all. Yeah,
I mean, you could drash that. It still is unclear to me why grammatically there's a lamed there, because normally there's a dagesh if it's a beged kefet, one of those 6 letters in the beginning of a word or in a syllable, or if it's because of a structure of a verb or a noun required a doubling of a letter. But there's no, aside from a midrashic answer of Aaron and Moshe, there's no grammatical reason why that letter would need to be doubled. Barry, is your hand up again or still? I can't hear you.
It's up again.
Okay.
I took it down and put it back up. Okay. So up until now, Moshe has been told he's going to do 2 things. He's going to speak to the people, and he's going to be speaking to Pharaoh. The only thing that Moshe has complained about so far is speaking to the people. They won't listen to him. And so what's occurring now is that Aaron is going to speak to the people. We're not discussing yet who's talking to Pharaoh. We've also said that literally Moshe is going to be putting his words into Aaron's mouth. And so it's a literal, almost like a puppet thing, putting his words into, and Aaron's, his mouth will be for him. And so going on consistently here is that he will be for you a mouthpiece.
Yeah, and there's a double marionette going on, because there's God instructing Moshe what to instruct to Aaron, so that it'll finally end up in Aaron's mouth, but originally it's emanating from the Holy One, right? If you look at the Uncle List for a second, because the Uncle List gives us a preview in the Rashi, and there are 2 interesting things to pull out. So v'malelhu lach, that's pretty straight translation of he will speak for you. La'ama, to the people. V'yehu yelecha lematurgaman. Maturgaman is how Onkelos handles the word peh, right? Now, there's an Aramaic word for mouth. This is not it. Anyone know what a maturgaman is? What does letargem mean in Hebrew? Translator, right? So letargem means to translate. And the word maturgaman had ritual significance. In ancient Judea, the Torah was read in Hebrew, and simultaneously, the Torah was translated by a maturgaman into the lingua franca of the era, which was Aramaic. So it's interesting that Onkelos, who is doing a tirgum on the Torah, used the word turgaman, which is really what Onkelos is doing to describe what Aaron would be doing. But it's a very interesting choice because, yes, that is the role Aaron is playing, but that's not what the word peh means. So one of these 1 in 100 places or so where Onkelos goes into commentary rather than straight translation. Va'ati le, and you will be for him, le rav, as a rav. What does the word rav mean? What's your guess as to what the word rav means in this Aramaic?
Not a rabbi?
Not a rabbi, right? So rav can mean rabbi. What else can rav mean? Anyone?
Teacher.
Rav can mean teacher, right? What else?
A holy person?
The word doesn't mean that. There are people who are called rav who might be considered holy people, but the word rav doesn't necessarily mean a holy person.
Many.
There, Dan?
Many.
So it could be a plural, right? Like rabim and yachid. And there's yet another thing that rav can mean, which is probably what it means here. Master, right? Rav can also be the same as Adon, right? Adon can be the beginning of the word Adonai, meaning God, but what does the word Adon really mean? Master, the one in charge. So the Aramaic Rav, of those, if we're guessing what Onkelos was trying to say when he's saying that God says to Moshe, you're going to be to Aaron as an Elohim, and we can't imagine God saying to Moshe, you're going to be to Aaron as a God. Is it saying you're going to be to Aaron as a rabbi? You're going to be to Aaron as a teacher? You're going to be to Aaron as many? Or you're going to be to Aaron as a master, the one in control? Which do you think they might have meant, or he might have meant? I can tell if people are chatting or just asked before. Okay, so let's hold that because it's an interesting choice by Onkelos. The Maturgaman is an interesting choice, and the choice of turning Elohim into Rav is interesting. And let's see what Rashi has to say on it. So, Renee, you're up still. So if you can read the Rashi on the Diber Hu Lach.
Diber Hu Lach, Bishulcha Yidaber El Ha'am.
Hold on. So what's the point that Rashi has already made?
That he's going to speak for him to the people on his behalf.
So how is Rashi choosing to read our verse in an interesting way? Or how is he resolving one of our questions on the verse? Or what's his question on the verse? Any of those?
Who's doing the speaking?
Well, the who's doing the speaking is clear in the verse. The challenge in the phrase v'diber hu lach is v'diber hu lacha is the lacha, right? Because lacha can mean two. And Rashi is aware of the fact that after the word lacha, you have el ha'am. So to you and to the people. And the first thing he does is say, no, lacha here does not mean to you, but means bishvilcha. So he's basically rendering lacha as bishvilcha, as if the verse said, v'diber hu bishvilcha el ha'am. Aaron will speak for you on your behalf to the people. So the first lamed as a preposition in our verse does not mean to. It means more for or on behalf of. Okay? V'zeh
yoviach al kol
yochiach.
Oh, yochiach, sorry. Al kol lecha v'lo v'lo v'li v'lo v'lechem v'lehem. Okay.
Keep going.
Smuchim lidibur shekulam lashon al hem.
Okay, so it's hard to read I mean, it's challenging to understand Rashi anyway, but he's now giving us a grammar lesson in Hebrew. So let's see if we can figure out what he's saying. So, ze yochiach. Anyone know what the word yochiach means?
It's like proving or showing.
Correct. So this example, Rashi is saying, ze meaning what I have just shown you, yochiach, proves or strengthens the argument that kol lecha veli velo velachem velahem, meaning that's his way of saying any times that the preposition lamed is in a declension to me, I'm gonna have to use an English word to make sense of it, even though he's saying it doesn't mean to. Like li to me, lecha to you, lo to him, lechem to you plural, lehem to them. When you have any of those constructions or any others, he doesn't include them. Doesn't have lahen in there for feminine. It doesn't have lanu, but he's listing them to make a category. Hasmuchim ledibur. What does that mean?
That it's changed with the speech.
But what does samuch mean? Anyone?
Changed?
Not changed. Like
Intertwined?
Connected or close to, right? Or associated with.
Isn't it like a contraction? Like it's like smichut? Like...
Yeah, smichut is the grammatical form when you have two nouns next to each other that are modifying each other, and so you have certain changes in the word as a result of it. It's beit sefer is smichut because you have two nouns who are samuch to one another, connected to one another, right? Bound. So samech mem chaf means to be bound, connected together. So what he's saying is, anytime you have a l word, lecha, li, lo, lechem, lechem, hasmuchim, associated with, connect to, juxtaposed to dibur, the verb, meaning to speak, then shekulam lashon al heim. What does that mean?
That they all have the meaning of for.
Correct. Don't read them as to, Rashi's saying, read them as bishvil or al or ligabe or for on behalf of, right? So, it started with a problem in our verse, and he's saying this verse is the archetype that helps us understand every time you come in the future, reader, if you come upon a lamed that with a pronoun attached to it, or a pronoun suffix, and it's connected to dibur, don't read it as to, read it as for or on behalf of. Larry, Diane?
So Diane just said to me, every Anglo-Hebrew speaker overuses bishvil, and I was wondering why the text didn't say, or Rashi didn't use b'shem in the name of. In English, on behalf of is what we would say.
Yeah. What do you mean by overuses bishvil?
So bishvil becomes so when you go from one language to another, you basically at least at the beginning, you translate from one to the other. And so in an attempt to translate for, bishvil is the easiest thing to translate the English for, but the truth is it's not used that much in Hebrew. It's much more likely to be le, but because prepositions don't translate directly, that's like the hardest thing when you're changing languages. So
you're meaning that non-native Hebrew speakers who are learning Hebrew overuse bishvil? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Gotcha. Including Rashi, apparently.
Could be.
Rashi, he probably went to Ulpan and he had a teacher who was, fair, and therefore he didn't learn all these nuances. Yeah, why? There are many arguments from silence as to why Rashi didn't say bishimcha or lichvodcha or letovatcha. Why? Your question or your comment, Diane, is interesting and also enters us into an unresolvable notion of what did the word bishvil mean in 12th century or 11th century France. We just can't know. We can know by inference. But yes, I think you're right that I'm sometimes even aware when I'm speaking Hebrew that I'm cutting my teeth on prepositions because I'm trying to render it directly and I'm forgetting to think in Hebrew.
Can I make one other comment about prepositions?
Yeah.
I'm curious if anybody else who speaks or tries to speak multiple languages has this issue. I spoke French when I was learning Hebrew, And so when I was speaking Hebrew, all the prepositions came out as French prepositions. And then when I learned Portuguese, Hebrew prepositions interjected themselves when I was speaking Portuguese.
They're sometimes the same word because prepositions tend to be very small words. And so they show up in weird places.
And I'm almost always wrong. The preposition I've chosen is almost always wrong. So,
I definitely remember third, fourth grade when I started learning French in my elementary school, which I never learned well. But small words like L would check me up. And for some reason, I don't know why this is so strong in my memory. I don't remember if I made the mistake from French to Hebrew, Hebrew to French, but I learned regel in Hebrew, which means leg, and regla in French, which means ruler. And I definitely used one in the wrong way, either in French class or in religious school class, because it was the same word. It was just meaning entirely different things. Yeah. I wanted to show you a Rashi from elsewhere in the Torah, that this is not the only first time actually that Rashi makes this comment. So hold on one second. You go back to Parshat Vayetze from 2 weeks ago, where Yaakov is having his dream. And right before he wakes up, he's hearing God or the angel say in verse 15, V'hinei anochi imcha. Interesting that it's that what we're about to read is a Rashi on the Lacha, but it's a verse that also begins with "I will be with you," right? And so that may be a coincidence or maybe not, because it's not the part that is connecting the Rashi. God says, "I will be with you." Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech. I will guard you everywhere that you go. V'hashivoticha. I will return you el hadama hazot, to this land, because he's about to leave and go to meet Lavan. Ki lo e'ezavecha. I will not abandon you. Ad asher im asiti. Ad, and I'm sure Rick is excited about with a great Yativ trap. Ad asher im asiti. Until I have done et asher dibarti lach, that which I have said to you. Does that mean I'm not going to abandon you all the way through until, or certainly not until I have done that which I said to you? And Rashi says, no. Oops. Dibarti lecha. Litzorchecha. Not to you, but for your needs. Ve'alecha. And interestingly, Diane Larry, not bishvilcha in this case. Rashi chooses a different way, right? Uma shehivtachti la'Avraham al zaro. God says to Yaakov, that which I promised to your Saba, Abraham, about his seed. Lecha hivtachtiv. And now Rashi is using the word lecha in his comment the way he says the Torah is using it. On your behalf, Jacob, I promised him. Not to you. I didn't obviously promise Abraham to you, but on your behalf, he promised him. V'lo le'esav. This was not a promise to Abraham for all of his descendants, but a specific descendant, meaning you. Shelo amarti lo ki yitzchaki karei lechazara. I didn't say in the Torah reading that we have on Rosh Hashanah that Yitzchak will be called your seed, but rather bet Yitzchak, from within Yitzchak, your seed will be called. Below kol Yitzchak, not the entirety of Isaac's descendants, because otherwise it would have included Esav. And now he gets to the general principle, v'cheins. So, kol li v'lecha v'lo v'lahem. Rashi is not 100% consistent. What did we get? We got lecha li lo lachem lahem. And over here, he starts with a li, and he takes out the lachem. Li v'lecha lo lahem. Hasmuchim etzel dibor, which are samuch, next to the root dibor. Mishamshin, we've seen that before in Rashi's language. That's Rashi's grammatic term for how the word is used in a sentence. Serves as the language of al, that should be in quotation marks. V'zeyochiech, and this verse proves it, even though he says our verse proves it. Shaharei im Yaakov lo diber kodem lachen, that he had not spoken to Yaakov before now, and that lacha is not, God reminiscing, all those things that I said to you, Jacob. He didn't say anything to Jacob yet. It must be all those things that I said about you when I was talking to your father and grandfather. So these macro grammatical points that Rashi makes, he sometimes makes more than once, and for good reason, because until I did some of this gumshoe research, I had forgotten that Rashi had made this comment on this verse, because I don't have all of Rashi memorized in my mind as much as I'd like to. Okay, I see Barry and I see Sue.
Well, I'm concerned with Rashi's letting loose of a grab hold of the original text, and it's letting it go a bit. In the original text, it's bulky, but the Moshe's word goes into Aaron's mouth, and in that regard, then Moshe would be the master of that mouth. In the interpretation we're seeing here, the grammatical discussion just had, Aaron is an independent person speaking for Moshe. It's a different interpretation than I think what we see in the text. And
you're reading that from Rashi's comment?
In Rashi, we just had this whole discussion here that my translations, he will for you he will speak, for you he will be your spokesman, for you, like a favor. He will help you. He will help you by speaking to. But in the actual text, it's Moshe's word is in Aaron's mouth, and Aaron's mouth will be as Moshe's mouth, and Moshe will be the Elohim of Aaron's mouth. This is more than Aaron just being a spokesman interpreting Moshe's words.
Yeah, I think in this case, Rashi is more focused on resolving a grammatical question than on making a macro point about the relationship between the two of them. So I think his rendering of lacha as bishvilcha is just to disabuse us of the notion that there is a speaking, that Aaron's going to speak to you, rather he's speaking on your behalf. So it may be that Rashi's not at all changing the basic relationship between the two of them, but it's possible. Sue?
I'm finding myself in two things. One is, here we are in Shemot, and there's a lot of, Veidaber le. We got a whole Torah to go here, and it seems like such a big pronouncement to say absolutely everywhere, in every instance, anywhere you say this, it's always, always, always for. I sort of don't get the point. Like why it seems like we're going to find someplace where it's not, where it's le and can be on or to or if or with, or I don't know. There's probably ways to read it. So I don't know.
Such a general principle?
Yeah. So early when it's one of the most common expressions in the whole Torah.
Well, Vaidaber Adonai is one of the most common expressions. But L'daber le, as opposed to daber el, is not. Vaidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor is very common. I don't think Vaidaber Adonai le Moshe lemor. And the reason it's not common is because of what Rashi's saying, is that L'daber plus le doesn't mean speak to. In fact, your comment actually in some ways proves Rashi's point. We, as you know, reader, we have hundreds of times where God is speaking to someone, and you'll notice, reader, that it's an L there, and L always means to when it comes to the bear. But sometimes you're going to see a daber and a lamed, not an L, and you're going to be tempted to read it as a to because it's so close to L. And I, Rashi, am telling you, no, that's not the case. And particularly, he's telling it here because we've got both. We've got an L and a L, right? It's like, and so we could stumble over that. And he's saying to us, the El Ha'am is definitely to the book, to the nation. The Lecha is definitely not, according to Rashi, to you. Joel, say out loud what you're sharing.
I was just saying that my book shows a counterexample in chapter 32, verse 34, where it has a diber le, and it's clearly to.
Meaning your book.
It's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a most of the time rule.
Your book meaning points out like in a footnote somewhere?
Yeah.
Or your book like the Torah. So it's It's not just your book, Joel. We all have it. What was the citation?
Exodus 32:34.
Let's look at that quickly. Hold on. All right. Exodus 32:34. Oops. Svaria. Come on. What's wrong with my computer? Come on. Okay. What do we got here?
You have El and Le in the same sentence.
Viata, lech, go, now go. Nechei et ha'am, lead the people. El, asher dibarti lach, to where I spoke, told, maybe to you to go, maybe. Hine malachi yelech lefanecha, behold, my angel will go in front of you, ubiyom pokti, and when I remember it, ufakati alehem chatatam, but I'm going to bring them account for what they've sinned. So the question is, let's see if Rashi says something there on El Asher Dibarti Lach. Let's see.
He does.
Yeah, look at that. So this is his own a departure from his chok, from his all, that it's all the time. Yesh kan lach etzel dibur b'makom elecha. Here, reader, you have a usage of lach, the preposition lamed, etzel dibur, connected to the word dibur, bimkom, in place of elach elecha, when it should have been el. V'chein ledaber lo el Adoniyahu, and he has another example as well. So interesting. When Rashi makes his comment here, when he made his comment back in Breshit, right? Assuming he writes his commentary chronologically, is it that when he got to here, he had forgotten about Exodus 32, and when he gets to Exodus 32, he doesn't come back and correct it? Or does he not mean here? Does he say the word kol in our verse? Yeah, he says kol. So he says kol lecha v'lach v'li v'lo lechem. So he says every, and even in his own commentary, you can find a countertext. Great, that's really interesting, Joel.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.